Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Friday Drinks. And this is bound to be one of our more exciting ones. We've got His Worship here and looking dapper as always. I've always known you to be wearing suits and yeah.
It's part of the overalls of the job.
Of the job.
It's the uniform.
The straight jacket.
The straight jacket. What can you do?
Looking lovely. Thank you very much for coming here. It's a lovely afternoon in Harare. The weather's just great. It's autumn, but it feels like summer.
Yeah, quite warm.
Yeah.
I envy you. I look overdressed for a Friday afternoon.
Well, thanks to Visa,
Yeah.
who are still our sponsors. As you can see, I'm still wearing the T-shirt. Not that it's a bother, but I love it. And thank you very much, Visa, for joining us and for sponsoring this show. We've got the Twitter Space audience joining us as well, so that we know, but we'll focus more on the cameras because that's where everybody is watching and they can see you.
Okay.
But thank you very much. So we decided that we're going to kick alcohol off the bar and we're going to have some Malawi Shanti.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm quite the party pooper. I don't mind people drinking at all.
Okay.
It's just that, I have too many responsibilities.
All right, fantastic. We don't want him drunk, so I'm gonna make him a Malawi Shanti, and we can start the show.
Sure.
While we do that, George and Rufaro, maybe you can tell us what you guys are drinking.
I don't know if the camera can see me, but I bought myself a set of wine glasses today. I was gonna have some red wine, but somehow between the fridge and my desk, I waylaid myself, and I'm back to the usual Tusker malt.
Are you that cheap, George? And Rufaro? Oh, that's good. That's most welcome. So I assume you're sober?
Literally, but not.
Okay, all right. Just another hour, then you can run away.
Drown yourself.
Indeed.
Yeah. How's the weather in Durban? Sorry?
It's quite nippy.
All right.
Down here. Yeah. So I ain't been getting that. It's a bright sunny over there.
Okay. Fantastic. Maybe, George, you can just start off with the structure of the show and what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, happy to do that. We are getting your YouTube feed, and I must say, His Worship. It just sounds funny to call Jacob His Worship, but anyway, His Worship is looking definitely.
Thank you.
I can't believe you've influenced him to have a pink drink with you. Were you even given a choice, Your Worship?
Yeah, I was. I then told him that I don't drink, was it unfortunately or tragically, I don't know which is which.
Fortunately.
So, the city requires a sober head, so to speak, yeah.
So, thanks, Tinashe. We are going to divide the show in two broad segments. We will have the initial segment in the sort of traditional Friday Drinks style, where we will interact with the mayor in studio and remotely between Tinashe, myself, and Rufaro. Just so we can go through some of the questions we've prepared and some of the questions that audience friends have asked us to ask. We will then open up the Twitter space at around 45 minutes or an hour from now to allow the audience to participate. I'd just like to remind everybody that Friday Drinks is primarily a business show. So we'd like to keep the discussion leaning as much towards business and the economy as possible. And I know we are in a very exciting period leading up to elections. And I know we all have our party sympathies and party preferences. May I just ask that we stay away from those this afternoon, because that's not what we're trying to achieve. There are several other platforms in which we can have lots of political party fun and excitement. So if that's all right for everybody, and if Tinashe has finished preparing a pink drink.
Yes, we have.
It's quite lovely.
We'll go.
Did you hear that, George?
Sorry, I didn't.
I was saying it's quite lovely.
Yeah, look. Take your word for it. And if I may say, since I last met you, you've become a politician, so I'll take it with a pinch of salt.
It's drama.
More like a bucket of salt.
He needs the sugar.
Yeah, even more. So, Your Worship.
Yes.
I'd like to get maybe some of the harder stuff out of the way.
Sure.
And we'll make our way to some of the easier topics and more pleasant topics.
Perfect.
As the afternoon unfolds.
It's perfect.
And where I'd like to begin is, we've seen you on the news a lot. We've seen you speaking a lot about the challenges you have running the city because of interference from the minister, because of, shall I say, the legislative infrastructure around the administration of local government in our country.
Yes.
And I know you're dying to talk about that, but I'm going to swivel away from that and say, well, okay, having said that, we've also seen a lot of issues within the city.
Yes.
And its administration.
Yes.
That don't seem to be right. I mean, to say the very least.
Yeah, sure.
We continuously read about corruption scandals. We continuously read about land scandals. We know the council hasn't produced audited accounts probably since God was a boy. Ghost work.
2019.
Workers,
2019.
etc.
Yeah.
The list is endless.
Sure.
Two questions. To what extent is that affecting the council service delivery?
Mm-hmm.
And part B, what are you doing about it? Because, I'm just sitting there as an outsider. I hear you. You blame it.
Mm-hmm.
You blame central government. You blame the legislative infrastructure. But you've got these major in-house problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I hear you. I quite agree with you that we have huge problems. Corruption in the city, corruption in society is endemic. It is one of the major costs of doing business in Harare and in Zimbabwe in particular. And I'll be the first to say that we need to deal with systemic corruption. We have all kinds of corruption. You have the service provision corruption, the little corruption. You want to get something done, you have to give this person $5, $10 to jump the queue, to get things that they normally should be doing anyway. You get to pay. In many ways, that's probably the easier to eradicate, but the more irritating and more pervasive in nature, because it's done at shop floor level, it's difficult to detect and requires a certain level of desperation on the end user and also some cooperation from the end user. Then there is mega corruption, the corruption of huge deals, inflated contracts, ill-gotten contracts, prices that are connived, people who get contracts to do things and are unable to do the work. And you mentioned the issue of the audit. The last audit we did was in 2019 when we had a system. And for some strange reason, senior management connived and influenced the councillors to chase away the company that was doing the audit because it had raised its license fee from 35,000 to 75,000. The irony is that they brought in a system which ended up costing the city, it's called the SAGE system, which ended up costing the city over 300,000 US dollars in licenses, but it failed to produce an audit. And that was not enough. Just recently, management, as you know, councillors were kept out of the tender process through the Procurement Act.
But let's, Your Worship, let's do this systemically. The first thing is we mean an external audit. Where an external audit, any of the big 4 or 5 or 6 come into the council. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. The law requires it, and this was last done, we don't know when. So just an audit, so that we know whether it's qualified or unqualified, it's secondary.
Yeah, well,
but just to get, are you saying that it's difficult to get auditors to come into?
No, the auditors will come because the Auditor General comes by law.
That's different. That's Auditor General. But can we get an external auditor to come in and look at the books?
Well, I'll check it with the law whether we are allowed to contract, your Kudengas or your Deloitte and stuff. But as a public entity, we are required by law to get an audit, and then the Auditor General is the one who comes and audits us. And the last time that we produced those set of audits was in 2019, where we had a BRQ system that used to work. For now, because of the lack of that system, we have been unable to produce an audit, and that is a very bad and tragic.
So how can you preside over, I mean, you're a professional, how can you preside over such affairs?
Yeah, but that's,
cannot even audit.
Yeah, that's why I want to put a stop to it. I'm a lawyer, a registered lawyer. I will tell you what happened from 2019. The government connived to chase me out of the mayor seat. So I was not there 2019, was not there 2020. Actually, 2020 I was in prison. Then 2021, I was being continuously suspended. So when I came back, I made it my priority that.
But why is it about you? Shouldn't it be about system?
It should be about the
council.
system.
So we don't want it to be about you as your worship, but we want it to be from a system perspective. Even with you in jail, an audit must happen.
Yeah, that's the natural thing because there's an accounting officer. But but then again, I'll put up my hand and say that sometimes in public entities, people have little appetite to be audited. And if there's no push from the residents, no push from someone at the top as the mayor, you will get a situation where any excuse and every excuse not to audit.
But by law, are we not supposed to be audited by law?
By law, we are. We are supposed to be audited.
So are you saying that the council is breaching the law?
Yes, by not being audited, the council is breaching the law.
So who's accountable?
We are accountable.
Who?
The mayor and the council and the town clerk. So what we have is that the accounting officer is...
So this has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with the officers who are holding office at the present moment.
Yeah, so...
Who have allowed the situation to happen where the council is not
Yes,
audited.
that is nothing.
So if you're admitting that, why should business then pay their rates?
Well, what we should do, it becomes a chicken and egg situation.
But there's something that you have total control over.
Yeah, that's why I'm taking steps to rectify it. What we need to do is that what I did when I was explaining to you is that there was a contract that's coming in to do an ERP, an enterprise resource package, which was going to cost the city 57 million US over a period of 5 years. We don't have that.
You're saying an ERP was going to cost you 57 million?
57 million US.
US dollars?
Yes.
What sort of ERP is that?
Some ERP which was done by our technical committee It's called Munosoft. I'm told that it's operating in South Africa in over 15 municipalities.
57 million. Okay. How much revenue does the council have?
It doesn't have that kind of money.
So why would that even be conceivable? That the council can actually sit?
That's the corruption I'm talking about. Remember.
Are you saying that there's a council mafia?
Yes, there is a council mafia.
Who is the council mafia?
The council mafia is contained in the bureaucracy. What happened? Let me give you the genesis of procurement.
Okay.
Procurement Act, the one that is currently in place, took out councillors, like the political councillors, outside the procurement process. The conventional wisdom was that councillors, one, are not educated, two, they are not knowledgeable, three, they will be corrupt. But what has happened is that it has become an Alice in Wonderland scenario. The management that was supposed to be knowledgeable, not corrupt, and reasonable sit in what they call technical committees and financial committees. They come up with what they call specifications for the contract. These specifications, we as councillors cannot interfere in the process for fear of violating the Procurement Act, which has criminal penalties for doing that. This was passed by Parliament. They sit as a technical committee, they say these are the specs that we want. They go out, put out a tender, they award the company gives you the bill and says 57 million. The process jumps from what you call it, the procurement authority called the PA, straight to PRAS, which is housed in the president's office. Now that PRAS is the one which then agrees or disagrees with the recommendations. And our own staff, our technical and the IT department had recommended this software, which was going to cost us 57 million US dollars. Thankfully, we objected as council to say we had budgeted 500,000 due to the historical record of the package that we used to have, and that managed to produce an audit. And therefore, we cannot go back to the residents for a supplementary budget to ask for 57 million US dollars. And we wrote a letter.
If the city doesn't have an ERP or an accounting package, how are you accounting for residents' rates and fees that we're paying for? What's actually happening?
What's actually happening is that the process becomes manual, old school accounting, which is prone to leakages and abuse because it then becomes very manual, and you have to go back to systems that we used pre-systems era or pre-computer era, and that then has a lot of abuses and has got delays. What we need to have at the current moment and desperately is to get the ERP up and running. And what we have done is that, firstly, the Auditor General recommended that we put back the system that we had, which used to operate. Secondly, I was having a meeting with my procurement guys and the finance director this morning, because I went to meet PRAS, and they gave us a letter telling us that they've cancelled. They've agreed with me and my councillors that we cannot afford the 57 million US contract, and they agreed to cancel. There's a committee called the SPOC, which is chaired by the Attorney General, and they agreed with the decision of the council to cancel that 57 million US contract. Then the question is, what then do you do? We had a system that allowed us to have an audit. We had a quarrel with it, and all we need to do is to get that system. And there's also a system that is being pioneered by government called LADS, that's being done by HIT, which is an accounting package. It has to adapt and to grow to be able to manage a city the size of Harare. But some synergies can be worked out so that at least at the very most this year, we will then be able.
What's happening in Marondera? Is this?
May I come in here tonight?
Yeah, sure.
His worship. Your worship.
Yes.
I presume because your job is as the mayor is part-time, I presume you still have your law firm?
Yes, I have my law firm. I'm ceremonial. I'm the only mayor in Southern Africa or in Africa who is managing a 3 million citizen on a ceremonial basis.
Yes. I presume you still have your practice and you've got some sort of manager.
Yes,
who looks after the financial affairs
yes.
of your law firm.
Yes.
Would you have given your manager the amount of time we've allowed you on this show to explain in any number of words and any floweriness of language why they have not produced books of account for 4 years?
Oh, they fired them in less time, and that is what you want to do. I came from private sector, like you say. Some of the excuses that I find in public bodies are also gobbledygook to me, or amaze me every day. You cannot fire. I can tell you that the IT person, the person whom we pay, and his whole department, we've got one of the biggest IT departments in the country as a city. But one, we have we have hardly any functioning internet. We hardly are able to communicate with the residents on email about the status of their accounts. A person cannot enter their address or into a system sitting at a phone to check on their property rates. Basic things that we have taken for granted that you do on EcoCash or some of these things.
So, Your Worship, you know how you're coming across. You're actually telling us that the council is worse than we think. That's the first thing.
And we mustn't pay our rates.
And we must not actually pay our rates because you're not in control. No one is in control.
Well, the situation is that for us, this is a candid platform.
Exactly.
This is our city. I'm not here to sugarcoat what's happening. I was elected by the residents to be able to point out the flaws that are there. I do have the solutions myself. The reason why I'm painting...
But you can't implement them.
Well,
because you have no control.
We can implement
Why haven't you done so in the last 4 years?
Well, in the last 4 years, I explained to you...
But it shouldn't be about you, remember? Because you're now making it about you. That if you're in jail, then nothing happens. So what happens if tomorrow...
we have to create a system.
The system itself must correct itself.
But a system begins by people who move to create the system. What we need to do, the reason is we need to put people who can identify a fault in the system. Identify the fault in the system, and then we put the remedies in the system. I sincerely believe I'm not going to be a mayor forever, okay? I also want to be a mayor and move on to other things. I think I'm writing a story for my life, and that story is not stuck at one place. But I do believe I've worked in many organizations. I've worked for international organizations. I've worked for US organizations. I've worked for local organizations. I've worked for the biggest law firms in the country. I know what I'm talking about, and I know the solutions.
So tell us what you can do in the next 4 months that you haven't been able to do in the last 4 years that can change the system.
Okay. What I'll be able to do in the next 4 months, it's one, we've been able, first of all, to stop people from getting $57 million from the residents. Two, we are going to have an ERP system in the shortest possible time within the next 2 weeks. I personally had to meet...
That's impossible.
That's possible. I will tell you how.
The city, the nature of the city, to implement an ERP in 2 weeks is...
No. We remember...
That would be world beating.
Yeah, but remember, we had a system before.
Okay, so you're just reverting to that.
Yes, we're simply reverting back to that system. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. We are going back to that system as a bridging ERP. When we go back to that system, it will then, because it was in existence from 2011 to 2019 when people had a dispute over the license fee. If you revert back to that system, then we have secured the accounting. And then once you do that, you then work out the specifications of the other modules that you want.
Who's going to implement this? Surely it's not you. Who's the person on the ground?
We are going to get an IT person. I think as I'm speaking now, the town clerk has issued a suspension to the hopeless IT person that we had, and we should be getting an IT person and the finance department is geared to implement that. The contractor whom we were working with is also the contractor that's working with Bulawayo City Council and who's also working with Zinwa as an entity. And they are quite familiar with the Zimbabwean terrain. They were in the city council before, and they should then be able to create that bridging ERP so that at least we have a system that can communicate with the ratepayers, can communicate with the other departments, and allow for us to have auditable accounts as per the recommendations of the Auditor General.
Okay, I think we can move on from there.
Okay.
George?
Let's move on. Okay, yeah, look, I think in the preamble to the conversation, George mentioned the politics, but I also think that what's quite clear is that the way the city is run is dysfunctional, and in many ways, the mayor is working, with his hands. So perhaps it's not productive to go into the weeds of why certain things aren't working. I think it's interesting to explore, what a functional city would, how it would be structured. If it was up to the mayor to come up with a structure for the city of Harare that would actually best serve its residents and work, what would it look like? We know that the current structure has serious issues and doesn't work.
Yes.
So perhaps, maybe the mayor can share with us his thinking. It was up to him. If you had a blank piece of paper and you had all the authority that in the world, how would the city of Harare actually set up and function?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's a very good question. And I'll try to be as brief as I can be and as detailed as I can be. First of all, we need the executive mayor back. This is the second biggest budget in the country after government. We are almost the second biggest employer after government. I've got 10,000 employees and increasing. I've got the biggest mechanical plant, Morton Jeffrey. We used to have power stations. I have 300,000 school pupils in school. I have maternity clinics that give birth to 3,000 babies a month. I have a road network that's second to none in the country. I have residents, clinics, over 50 clinics, and so forth. The biggest fire brigade or emergency response setup in the whole country. So you need an executive mayor, and my budget is huge. It's probably the second biggest budget. So you cannot run as I'm doing this city on a part-time basis, where in the morning I'm arguing a divorce case, in the afternoon I'm trying to deliver 500 megaliters of water every day to the residents. I'm trying to help people. You are trying to prevent treatable diseases. You are trying to move sewage. You are trying to earn income.
But Mayor, why are you making it about yourself?
No. It's the office.
But even the office, whether it's an executive mayor or not, it shouldn't matter.
It
even
matters
ceremonial.
because there is no other city. Because you see, we cannot reinvent the wheel. All other cities in Africa are managed by executive mayors because it is a management issue. Decisions have to be made within a period. Not only do you need executive mayors, you also need executive chairpersons. That is, the one who is in charge of health must be knowledgeable about health issues. Finance, knowledgeable about finance issues. It must be run the way it's, you would run your Cape Town, you'd run your Joburg with the various MECs.
But I can put it up to you that even if Cape Town was managed on a ceremonial mayoral position, it will still run well because of processes and systems. We want to move away from the individual or from the office. Because frankly, it shouldn't matter.
It should matter. You cannot, because what happens is that there are leakages. You need somebody to be full-time on the job.
But they can be corrupted. An individual can be corrupted.
Yeah, but you then deal with the corruption. But what you need to be, it's like running a company as big as Delta with a ceremonial director and say it's going to work. It's not going to work. You can't run ZESA like with a ceremonial chief executive. It's not going to work. Systems are developed for you to be able to deliver efficiently. And it's a correct criticism to say that a system is not working. And let's move on to a system that is working across Africa, across the world. This is a system that works.
Okay, George, come in.
Can we move on now, gentlemen?
Yep.
I sense we are getting down a rabbit hole, and very interesting that the mayor made some references to Alice in Wonderland earlier on. I suspect we shall be seeing the Wizard of Oz and other characters popping out.
Okay, let's come back to the rule.
Gentlemen, let's move away a little bit from the administration and let's move on to issues of funding and investment. I'm sitting in Nairobi, as I've said over the past few weeks, a city that has grown phenomenally over the last couple of decades. I have, during the past few weeks, had the opportunity to interact with some people involved in the management of the city of Nairobi and in strategic planning. And a phrase I heard over and over again was horizontal infrastructure, which I've learned refers to roads, sewer, water, etc. Literally horizontal infrastructure, the infrastructure that runs along the ground. And strategically, this city, the city of Nairobi, a generation ago, took the decision to invest in horizontal infrastructure. And once there had been investment in horizontal infrastructure, vertical infrastructure, that is to say buildings, followed.
Yes.
And when vertical infrastructure came, more investment followed.
Yes.
Sitting in my apartment right now, and as I look out of the window, I see a building with Sanlam on it, I see a building with Radisson on it, a building with Oracle, a building with Microsoft, you name it. The big names of the world are here.
Yes.
When I compare in the city of my birth, I see there's been no new horizontal infrastructure for 43 years. I look around and say, what has council built since 1980?
That's an exaggeration.
And I can
but
point.
Anyway, we'll let.
Look, what have they built? We can point to a few clinics, a few schools, one or two road expansions like Samora Machel and actually Samora Machel.
We have to deal with. I hear your question.
A person who emigrated at independence, if they came back to Harare today, would use the same map they had and they'd still find their way around the city.
They'll not get lost.
What's the impediment?
Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but what we did is, remember, let me talk about electricity. Remember, we used to have a thermal power station as the seat of Harare, which was taken over by ZESA for no payment. We used to produce an installed capacity of 110 megawatts. ZESA took it and almost mothballed it. It's producing 0 or 15 megawatts per day. We used to have the cheapest electricity, the second cheapest electricity after Blaawai. Our electricity was at 53 cents. Blaawai was at 27 cents. ZESA took it and they took the whole cabling, the over 200 buildings, the office that they are sitting in opposite Jameson Hotel was built by the city and the other cities. So they took that revenue head and immediately the day they took it, they started sending us a bill for electricity when they took it for free. I've been negotiating with the people at ZESA and I've said it in council. Let's have our power station back. Let's have our buildings back. And we'll produce electricity for our people and we'll sell it. We used to have what we called the street lights levy, which they took and changed it into the raw electrification levy. But they left me with the duty to keep the street lights on. Not only was that taken, you remember what we call road user fees, vehicle registration fees. I had a quarrel with Zinara. It was again taken by Zinara. We had one of the longest road networks in Africa in 2009 when Zinara was constructed. We had a road network longer than the road network which was in DRC, which was in Malawi. And that had been built by the residents of Harare. Enter Zinara, central government. They took user fees. I am arguing that there are 800,000 cars in the streets of Harare. Statutorily, they are all supposed to pay $20 per day. That gives us $64 million per annum. Guess what? They only remit $1.4 million to $2 million back to the city of Harare to do the road network and to repair the road network. And the $62 million goes to God knows where. There's fuel levy. All this money.
So while it's clear,
yes,
George,
I am. But
George,
it's revenue that I'm supposed to use to build the roads, to provide energy, to provide water.
Let me put it in a different way. I think we have talked about revenue and expenditure and how little control you have over that. That's very clear.
It's being stolen, yeah.
Yeah, that's very clear. But I think what George is talking about, for example, is certain neighborhoods. So, for example, Avondale has been made into a commercial zone. But you've limited the number of floors that can be built to 2. Why not 10 or 18? Right? Because if you do that and you allow developers, because clearly there's a limit to what you can do, right? From controlling the revenue and the expenditure. But from the law, your councillors, for example, could turn some levy or Bardal or whichever neighborhood or whichever zone
that's what we're doing.
Into 10, 20, whatever.
No.
And that's actually an increase of revenue for you.
Oh, that I can agree with.
So the law is in your hands.
Yeah.
You can change the law yesterday.
Yes.
Why hasn't it happened?
Well,
and why 2 floors for Avondale as a zone, for
it
example?
beats me as well. Look, what I can do, I listened to your other show.
Yeah.
I quite agree with you. Densification is the way to go. Higher is the way to go. You can't have a city that is as short as its mayor. Where when I'm standing short as I am, I can see the top of a roof. You have a problem of individuals around. I have a problem that in Chinoy.
So what do we need to do to change that?
What I need to do is when I listened to your talk, your developers and other people can present us with papers